So welcome to this quarter's mental health and well-being community of practice. This one is on cultivating joy, and I will pass it over to Jaylene to just do a short presentation on that.
Thanks, Angie. Good morning, everyone. Super happy to be here with you today. Excited for this topic. Like Angie was saying, when we were coming up with this topic, we were just both of us actually talking to each other about how hard it is sometimes to access joy or like feel joy. And so I thought it would be a really great topic to talk about how we can cultivate joy and have it contribute to our resilience or how resilient we are, um, and and little like micro practices. I kind of really wanted to get into like how can we it's great to talk about joy and think about joy, but how can we actually cultivate it and pull it into our daily lives? So, um, obviously, want to start with talking about what exactly is joy. This book by Brene Brown, Atlas of the Heart, is has been super informative for me. I kind of use it as a resource instead of an actual like sit down read cover to cover kind of book. But if you haven't ever seen it or experienced, this book goes through sort of a whole range of emotions and how they're connected to each other and what those emotions actually are. So, two of the sort of high points in the definition of what is joy in that book, excuse me, which actually I wanted to mention that on HBO or Max or HBO Max or whatever they're deciding to call it at any time in the streaming world, there's a documentary where Brene Brown goes through with an audience different parts of Atlas of the Heart, and it's a really great watch if you haven't seen that. But the definition of joy in this book that she uses that really kind of resonated with me is an intense feeling of deep spiritual connection, pleasure, and appreciation. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about kind of reading about it was the second quote that while experiencing joy, we don't lose ourselves, we become more truly ourselves. And I think that's really different than a lot of other emotions. I think when you get into like the negative emotion spectrum and you're feeling sad or angry or frustrated, you kind of lose the connection with yourself, as opposed to when we're feeling joy, we become more truly ourselves or we can embody ourselves more. And I thought that was a really lovely way to think about joy, and define joy. And it sort of also brings up for me, and I think the difference between joy and happiness is something that I think is important to sort of highlight because while they're really closely connected, they are two different things. Oops, happiness is a result of something. Happiness is related to, like, I'm happy right now. I'm happy to be here. Angie and I just had a meeting before this, and we were chatting and catching up on things. And it makes me happy to be in community and spend time with people. And that's a something where I'm reacting to the current environment, right? So happiness is sort of a reaction to something that's happening. Whereas joy is an internal practice that is renewable from within, right? It's not dependent always on our circumstances, although ideal circumstances definitely help. But it can be cultivated. And if we can access joy, we can use it as a way to approach life. And so I think it's a really interesting difference between those two things, whereas like happiness is a reaction, but joy is an approach. And it leads me to think about, and I was sort of spending a lot of time on this while I was putting this together. Happiness is really important, right? The little moments of happiness and having moments that create happiness are very important. But is if we are pursuing happiness, cannot get in the way of a deeper and more meaningful experience like joy and gratitude. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment so that we can talk about that, because I think, when I was thinking about that, and I would love to hear from the group if you guys have stuff to add to this, is that, as Angie and I were talking about how difficult it is sometimes to access joy, turns out there's a word for that in the Atlas of the Heart. It's called foreboding joy, which is sort of like a unwillingness to be vulnerable enough to sit and marinate in joy, right? And so that really comes from like a fear or a lack of vulnerability to allow joy to be a part of our lives. And so I think when we pursue happiness, that's an easy substitute for being vulnerable to joy, right? And so I'm curious how you guys think about this and if that resonates with you, or some thoughts before we move on to some other joyful conversation, because it's not so easy to feel joy all the time. Vulnerability is a really hard emotion for some of us. I know it is for me, for sure. So I want to check in before I go back to sharing my screen and make sure that we give an opportunity to sort of think about that in a thoughtful way and contemplative way, how joy and happiness are related, but not the same.
I love that you gave the word foreboding joy, right? Gave it
Yeah.
say something to what Angie said, because that really resonated with me too. I think it's sometimes happier to find those moments of happiness or experience joy with people that might be friends. That, at least for me, it's my experience. Like when I'm with my girlfriends or my sisters versus my immediate family, because my immediate family growing up was so chaotic, right? We had a lot of trauma. And so it's almost like I'm afraid to do that with my own family, which is crazy, right? Because they're the people you're with every day. And then they see you all grumpy and it's like, stop, you're a counselor. We knew you could do this. But now I have a word. So I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, I love that there's a word for it,
Foreboding
right?
joy. And I'm gonna remember.
Foreboding joy. Yeah. It's like you're always like, okay, joy's here, but you want to like peek around
Yeah,
the corner and be like, is something else coming? Is anything going to
yeah.
follow this up? Right. And framing it in the terms of like needing to be vulnerable to accept that makes me feel like I can tackle that. Right. That's easier than saying, oh, I just can't be joyful. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Let me go back.
my husband will feel the excitement for me, he says. He's like, he goes, I know that it's hard for you to be excited about this, but I am going to be excited for you, because this is actually a really exciting thing. Um, even though I'm 50 years old and I've been doing this work and, this healing work for decades, at literally decades at this point, um, you don't realize that you don't experience those things, right? Until you actually, start learning about it. It's like, oh, you know what? Like someone points it out, right? Like, how would I know? I thought that I've always experienced excitement. So of course I get excited. Like that's a normal human emotion. And then realizing, oh, I get excited for other people and I get excited and I have joy and happiness for like other people and the things that they're experiencing. But when it comes to my own stuff, I'm always right waiting. And so like having someone to be able to point it out, since Cynthia, I think, saying that with your family, that's of course, like they're, you know what I mean? They're the ones closest to you, the ones you don't have to be or do anything for, right? And so I think our natural things come out. Um, and so having somebody really like this is an intentional practice. I think when it says like it's an internal practice and it's renewable from within, that it has to become intentional. And sometimes we need somebody outside of ourselves to show us what that looks like if we've never, or if we can't access what that feeling feels like within us, for
Yeah,
it. So, yeah.
totally. I love that your husband does that for you, Angie. Okay, so I have a quick video. Um, it's just a couple minutes long. Hopefully, now I am good with technology as long as technology is good with me. So let's all hope that when I hit play, we hear words, and we'll hear some top tips about sort of some ways to cultivate joy, and then we'll get into that conversation ourselves and talk about what it does for our nervous system and how it helps with resilience. No? Angie's like, no, that's
No,
not
it's not.
working.
I see her lips
Oh,
moving.
yeah, me too. All right. Well, that was a nice effort.
Did you want to
I-
stop sharing? Did you click share sound?
Yeah, you can actually just open it up and click share sound.
oh my gosh,
Oh,
you guys
yeah,
are so
right.
smart. Like open it like
And
when you
no, on
say
the share
open.
button.
On the share button. Click
Oh,
the
on the
share
share
button.
button. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Do I go into advanced sharing options? This is
It should be on the right-hand side. There's going to be like a thing, and then there's a little box that says share sound. Once you click
oh,
share,
yeah. Oh, share sound. Roger that. Hey guys, thanks.
yeah.
All right. Now, Angie, let me know if you can hear it. I gotta go back. I can't find like the button. Play. My play button's gone. Here we go. Hang on. I'm just gonna reset. There we go. Oh, it wants me to install something to share. So we're just gonna move on. Okay. Uh, why joy matters. Let's go to that. Let's stick with why joy matters. Um, joy. So when we think about joy and cultivating it as an inner resource and looking at how it builds our resilience, right? So joy can strengthen experiencing joy and having joy in our lives. It strengthens our nervous system, right? Because we're releasing those feel-good hormones that help us feel relaxed and in our positive state. Laughing and feeling joy can lower your blood pressure, and all those positive brain chemicals are sending oxygen to your brain, which increases the additional brain chemicals. But experiencing joy also helps us recover from stress factors. So, sort of faster. So, sort of having that backlog or like that savings account of joy, I think balances, right? Those negative times of our life and can help us recover from stress faster. A lot of us have already brought up the joy and the happiness that we feel when we're with our friends and when we're with people that we enjoy being with. Building those deeper social connections, um, we all know helps with resilience, right? Because when we have community, when we have that support, it helps us be more resilient. It gives us that feeling of having stress be more tolerable because we do have that support. And then we're also rewiring or strengthening our neural circuits that are related to resilience when we're loading in these positive experiences and having these, the relaxed positive state of being in social connection and all of those things. We're actually engaging in some rewiring if needed, or just strengthening the neural circuits that we already have. Some sciencey data research here as far as are talking about joy. Barbara Fredrickson, she's got a lot of work in this field and on this topic. So there's a couple studies from her that I'm going to reference here. There's a 2000 study that shows positive emotions can undo the physiological and psychological effects of negative emotions. And that's called the undoing hypothesis. So being able to pull in these positive experiences, the feelings of joy, can actually undo the physiological and psychological effects of negative emotions, which we know that from our ACEs works, where the positive childhood experiences are offsetting these adverse childhood experiences. This is happening in the same way, right? The broaden and build theory, where the discussion in this study is that positive emotions, they broaden your mindset and they build the personal resources for future resilience. So when you're experiencing joy and you're having these happy feelings, but also building those social connections, they kind of open up for you what the future could look like or what it could look like, to be happy and to be joyful and be in community. And then there's a positive correlation between positive emotions and your ego resilience. A great quote from that: lived experiences like joy and interest are what start the process of exploring, learning, connecting, and building new resources. So it's not like experiencing joy is just going to get you immediately there, right? But experiencing joy, it sort of opens up your brain and your mind to the process of wanting to learn more or to connect with people and build those new resources. So it's the beginning of our journey, right? Joy can help us build our or give us emotional fuel, right? I kind of call it like a little savings account of happiness and joy and good feelings that we can draw from whenever we're having a difficult time. There's a practice in Buddhism called sympathetic joy that sort of functions like this, right? If you can, if you're in a difficult time of your life, you can, and I do this often, imagine that there's someone out there doing something that you love. So, like for me personally, I love hiking. And when I can't do it and I feel sad that I can't do it, right? I'll imagine that there's someone on my favorite trail and I can kind of visualize what they're seeing and I can kind of visualize the experience that they're having. And I sort of have joy on behalf of them, right? That they're doing this thing and that there's someone there enjoying the things that I love. So that's kind of a joyful practice. It's called sympathetic joy, and it works really well when you kind of practice it and build that skill of being able to imagine someone doing that. Joy can help us build our inner resources. So when we have these daily joyful moments and we're building those neural pathways, that gives us that bigger and greater future emotional strength. And obviously, we've already talked about this, the hormones and the endorphins that are released during joyful experience, they reduce our stress hormones and have that natural mood boost. So how can we cultivate joy?
I'm going to
Yeah.
pause you right there, Julie. I had to look up ego resilience because
Mhm.
I have never heard that term before. And so I figured if I had to look it up, that there was probably somebody else who did not know what that was either.
Hit me
But
with it.
ego resiliency refers to a person's ability to adapt and adjust their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in response to different situations. It involves finding a balance between perseverance and flexibility, which helps individuals cope with stress and challenges. So, really, it is like we talk a lot about self regulation in our nervous system. Which is a very physical things, right? A lot of times we talk about breath, we talk about calming down that kind of nervous system. I think this appears to me the way I'm reading it is when we talk about changing our thoughts and reframing our thoughts, right? That's one of the strategies, right? That's their
Interesting.
I also have the video pulled up if you want to watch
Sure.
that either now or after this. Up to you.
Let's watch it because it kind of goes along with there's some things in there to cultivate joy. So let's go through this slide and then we can watch it if
Perfect.
you want to share it. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Practices to cultivate joy. So the number one is a gratitude practice. And what was interesting about this when I was reading about it, like we always say, oh, be grateful, have an attitude of gratitude, etc. That is not what is really considered in this sense, right? As far as wanting to cultivate joy, that's not really a gratitude practice. This is talking about an actual practice, something that you're actually doing. So whether that's a gratitude journal, having a time of the day, right? Like in my family, when it's 11:11, we always call it out and make a wish. Maybe you have a time of the day where you call out, where you just think, okay, at 12:34, right? At 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to say something I'm grateful for. And my house, we actually do a gratitude practice at dinner. Everyone goes around the table and they say the best part of their day, their least favorite part of their day, and something they're grateful for. And when I had teenagers, we had to like, okay, you can't say food every day. You can't say sleep every day, right? We had to really ask them to like think about your day and something you're grateful for. So really engaging in an actual practice, engaging in hobbies and activities, having something that you are doing outside of work and responsibilities, something that you enjoy. I think this next one is one of my favorite, appreciating glimmers, really looking for small positive moments in everyday life, right? Not waiting for some big, huge, grateful thing to show up, but just noticing, you know, seeing a nice interaction at the store, or being grateful for someone that lets you merge in traffic, right? Those things really do happen around us more often than I think we call out and pay attention to. Ensuring you connect with others, building those social connections, spending time with people that bring you joy and that you can also bring joy to them. Pets are a great way to experience joy. They definitely, we have a puppy and there's a lot of unconditional love there. A lot requires a lot of attention, but there's also a lot of joy in that too. And practicing laughter. So, actually, even if you fake smile, a forced smile, if you wake up in the morning and you make yourself smile, that releases the dopamine that your brain needs to sort of settle your nervous system and experience joy. So, I thought that was kind of interesting. It doesn't even have to be a smile that is authentic or happening because something amazing is happening, right? You can just make yourself smile and your brain will be like, okay, we're happy now. We're feeling joy now. So you can kind of get that dopamine hit either way. So Angie, I'm going to stop sharing so you can share and show us our video as someone who knows how to use your sound.
Positive or pleasant emotions aren't just frivolous, they can help resource us to deal with challenging times. I'm Vanessa King, Head of Psychology and Workplaces at Action for Happiness, and here to welcome you to Joyful June, based on our key to happier living of emotions. Notice what's good. Now, there's a lot of difficult stuff going on in the world right now, and many of us are experiencing challenges. So it might seem that trying to cultivate pleasant emotions like joy and peace and calmness might just feel frivolous, or might even make us feel guilty. Yet science shows that when we experience pleasant emotional moments, we become more open to others, more open to ideas, and more flexible in our thinking. We're better at learning, we're better at complex problem solving, and little by little that can build our psychological resources and our resilience and actually help us cope with those difficulties. So here are 3 tips this month to experiment with to cultivate pleasant or positive emotions in your daily life. So the first tip is really tapping into our senses. Now, this is especially good if we tend to get caught up in our heads or overwhelmed. And it's just resourcing our sense of our sight, our hearing, our taste, our touch, etc., our smell even. And we can use those to actively seek out little boosts of positive emotions. So it might be noticing the sound of laughter or trickling water. It could be noticing the smell of freshly baked cakes or bread as we walk past a bakery, or a beautiful rose in the garden. There's lots of roses where I am at the moment. It's rather lovely. Or it could be touch, feeling kind of the soft fur of a pet maybe, or cool cotton on our skin, noticing sights, beautiful sunset or the sparkles of sunlight on a pool of water, or even our favourite colour. So using our senses in this way, we can actually activate positive emotions without kind of getting too much into cognition. So activate your senses this month and see what positive emotions you can find. The second tip is what I'm calling punctuating your day with PAX pauses. Now, PAX is Latin for peace, and it's also a little acronym. Set a sort of notification on your phone, dare I say that, 2 or 3 times a day, And when the notification goes off, just simply pause, pause. Breathe in and then just notice what's around you and find something that you appreciate, you value, you find beautiful or amazing. And simply breathe in and breathe out with that. And make sure the exhale, the X there, impacts, is slower than your in-breath. Just do that for a few breaths and you might find that that gives you a moment of peace and calm. So punctuate your day with 2 or 3 PAX pauses and see how that feels. And the third tip this month is creating a kind of mood music playlist. Now, most of us will experience different emotions over the course of a day or even, over a period of time. And of course, not all of those are pleasant emotions. So maybe create a little playlist for some of those emotions you commonly feel. So maybe if you have moments of sadness or frustration or anger, and find a piece of music that kind of represents that for you and put that as the number one tune on the specific playlist. Then find a piece of music that you find calming or peaceful. Add that to the mood music playlist. And thirdly, find a piece of music that you find uplifting and energizing and joyful, and add that. So you can create a little 3-tune playlist to help you kind of process maybe an emotion that you're experiencing right now, maybe a less pleasant emotion, and then move through kind of calming, peaceful, trying to let that go, and then replacing it with a more uplifting, joyful tune. And if you want to tap into some sources of uplifting tunes, we've got the Joyful June playlist on Spotify under Action for Happiness that you can tap into. There's lots of really fun tunes on there. So as ever, that's it from me. The 3 tips are using your senses. So tapping into sounds, smells, sights, tastes and touch, as sources of activating pleasant or positive emotions for yourself, just in your everyday life. The second tip is punctuating your days with little PAX pauses, P standing for pause, A standing for taking your attention to something you appreciate, value or find amazing or beautiful. And thirdly, breathing in and then exhaling that slow out breath that can down-regulate our nervous system, helping us feel calmer. And the third tip is creating a mood music playlist. So tapping into a less pleasant emotion that we might be feeling, then a piece of music that helps us feel calm and transition from that unpleasant emotional state. And thirdly, move into a more uplifting or joyful emotional state. So as ever, we love to hear how you're getting on with these tips and any of your ideas and thoughts on any of our social media platforms, and indeed on our Action for Happiness app, which is free to download wherever you get your apps from. And it's a lovely, inspiring, uplifting community on there that we'd love to see you be part of. So thank you for watching or listening, and look forward to seeing you here again next month. Thank you.
Thanks, Angie. After I watched that video, I think for like 3 days, for like a couple days, I was like, as ever, I hope you have a great day. She like really got to me. She's so posh. She definitely impacted, my family might say, a negative way because they got pretty sick of it. But one thing, one thing that I really want to kind of touch on from her video before we move on is at the beginning when she's talking about, right, because that video is just from this past June. And when the world feels chaotic, right? And we have so much challenging news available to us if we choose to consume it, sometimes it can feel uncomfortable to be happy and be joyful, right? And trying to balance those things and have like and we can rise to the challenge of the things that are facing us, and also we can have joy in our lives, right? And understand that that is actually fueling our ability to rise to the challenges that we have in our life. And in some ways, cultivating joy is kind of an act of resistance. Like, I will not give in to sadness and scaries and um, the news cycle that just regurgitates bad,
Mhm.
right? I don't know. How do we feel about that? It feels hard sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
when
feel
she called
weird
when she
sometimes.
called it out at the beginning, I was like, "Oh, yeah," because it's I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of like during grief, right? If anybody has lost anyone that has been close to you and you're in just that heavy, just horrible grief, and then something good happens and and you feel like, like, can I even like feel happiness and joy? Like almost like it's a um like you're doing something wrong, like you're not
Hmm.
recognizing how heavy, the what is kind of going on. That's what it felt like to me when she said that. I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, I tried never to watch the news anyway. I haven't watched the news for about 15 years, 16 years because of how bad it was. But there are times that, we get stuck in the scrolling, and no matter like how clean I try to make my social media apps, right? The stuff comes up. So yeah, that I felt that was interesting. I also had to go back and I had to see what the app was she was talking about, which is
Yeah.
Action for Happiness. And so I put the link in the chat. There's a website, but they also have an app that you can get, daily actions and inspiration on your phone. Connect with a like-minded community. Um, One thing I found fascinating and is she was talking about, I had to write it down, activating your senses in order to experience joy, right? And I have been reading this book on how our brain develops. We're putting together an early childhood training of trainer and just for my own personal learning, because I have experienced so much trauma at such a very early age and all through my childhood, and then adulthood just reinforced all of those patterns. It's really difficult. Like I have an active process that I have to do every single day, all day long for it, which is fine. That's just where we're at. But I like to know, like, okay, so how did this develop? And it gives me more power over and control over my reactions in adulthood. And our senses, we have, our five senses, they are actually the first structure for safety. That's how we learn safety as infants, right? And they're talking about like touch and smell and all of those. It's why when when we get activated, any of those senses can activate those trauma responses in it, because they actually are the first thing that is developed. That comes into our brainstem, right, to our survival brain. And through those senses, it's the only thing our survival brain has as our senses. It makes the initial decision of whether it's dangerous or whether it's safe. So after that brainstem says, okay, this I think is safe, then it brings it up to the limbic system, which adds the emotion and story into it. And that makes the second decision, right? And then if that is still deemed safe at that point, once we have emotion and stories in it, then it goes to our prefrontal cortex, where we're safe, right? Whereas if we have accessed that danger at either one of those points, that's where we're going to have that trauma response. But the senses are our first, that's that neuroception. All of this is done, outside of our prefrontal cortex and in milliseconds for us. And so using your senses to help cultivate that joy, right, is neurobiologically appropriate. Because that is that first layer of defense that our human system has created to see if the threat is safe or the threat is dangerous. And so I thought that was super fascinating that she said that, because neurobiology, there's science behind that, is what I'm saying. It's not just like, oh yeah, bring your senses in it, but no, it's neurobiologically, scientifically backed up there. So that was a lot.
So, yeah.
Sorry.
So, as ever, Angie, thank you very much. But that really makes sense when we go back to talking about joy and experiencing joy and the hormones that it releases, rewiring those parts of our brain, right? And so if we're bringing our senses into the experience and focusing on our senses in to create the experience, right? We could be working to rewire and build that imprint of safety in a different way in our adult brain, right? Which we all know takes a lot of practice, right? This might not be a skill that we have. And so practicing it all of the time will give us so much more access to it when we really, really need it, right? Practicing it when life is good, right, helps us access it when life is challenging. And thinking of joy as something that is not a bonus or an extra in our life, but a very critical part of our life to allow us to have this fuel to face our challenges and become more resilient within ourselves and within our community. Let's see. Okay. Like I said, the glimmers and those really tiny moments throughout our day, they're very accessible to us when we're looking for them, when we're focused on them, when we have a positive bias over that negative bias of what we're looking for. Some micro practices for daily joy, really short 30-second practices. And this first one is really pulling in our senses as well, looking around, notice and listening, and naming 3 things that you are grateful for at any given moment. This could be a transitional thing when you move from one activity to another, when you move from your desk to your car, from your car to your home, etc. Really looking around and pausing and calling out 3 things that you're grateful for. Taking a joy photo. I have a photo. If you open my photo library, probably the most likely thing you are going to see, there's 2 things you're going to see: a million selfies that my daughter took when she stole my phone, and counterbalanced by a million sunsets. I am just a sunset person. I have so many of them in my phone. And I have a little album of my favorites that I go through. And when I look at them, I can really put myself back in that spot and remember, like, I remember the sunset and how beautiful it was at that time. The awe and wonder of nature is a place where I can access a lot of joy. Sharing a laugh with a person, or even if you are good at cultivating your algorithm, make sure that you have some comedians, some funny things, some really funny things in your algorithm so that you can find them quickly if you need to get that. If you're not good at fake smiling, let's get a real laugh and a real smile in there. And then another sensory experience, which is stepping outside and just taking a breath, looking at the sky, enjoying nature. If you can hear birds, that's a really great reset. That tells our brain that we're in a really safe place and that there's no danger and predators around because the birds are hanging out and singing, right? We are going to then take a minute here and break into small groups. If you want to just kind of make note of this before you go into your group, we're going to ask you to do some joy mapping, right? So, talking in your group about all of these 4 things, one of these 4 things, whatever you feel most comfortable with, what brings you joy personally. And I can drop this into the chat before we leave into the room. What brings me joy with others? What brings me joy in my oops, sorry guys. What brings me joy in my work? And how can I commit, oh, thank you, Angie, to a practice of daily joy? Some of the examples that we've brought up, the micro practices, the gratitude practices, etc. Some of the practices from the video, or your own practice of how can you commit to something daily, thinking of it as maybe an act of resistance in our world and definitely an act of resilience in our world. So we're going to break into small groups and talk about joy for a little bit. And when we come back, we would love to share some practices and what brings us joy.
Yeah, absolutely. So we put that in the chat. You'll be able to access it when you're in the room. You can click on the chat and those will pull up. Also, if you share in chat in your breakout room, that stays just in between that little group. So just so that way you know that you have that. And we'll just do a quick one, 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and come back. Oh, I have to hit open. Sorry, I thought I did. I hit create and not open. So how was that?
Yeah, how were our breakouts? What are we bringing back? Give me some joy from your groups.
We talked about lots of stuff, and Jody is our joy guru. So she gave us
Jody is.
a lot of tips, yes,
Yes.
on how to practice daily joy. Yeah, we had great conversations.
Nice.
Great. Yeah, that's great.
Joe, do you have any tips for the larger group?
We
Oh,
all
we
love
all
the
love you.
outdoors.
Same.
Yeah. Awe and wonder from nature are like can bring so much joy.
I was just sharing, at work during my lunch, I go outside and I walk for 10, 15 minutes.
Mm.
And then there's a little park area. And I will go to the park and I take off my socks and my shoes and I put my bare feet on the dirt. And I'll
Mhm.
sit there and I'll stretch. I watch the birds, I listen to the birds, see the butterflies, the hummingbirds, and just be present in that moment for a few minutes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
That
then
sounds lovely.
come back to phone calls and helping people.
Right. Right.
That sounds lovely. And hummingbirds are like, it's like when you see a hummingbird, it feels like a gift. Like it feels like especially when they're like out of a tree or they're right in front of you. Like it really feels like a present to me of like, thank you for showing up because it's so, they're so fast and zipping around and I love that. I saw a meme of like when you reach middle age, you get sorted into one of four houses, right? Like strength training and protein, bird watching, pickleball, or sourdough starters, right? I would like to be sorted into the bird watching house, please.
Oh, my husband and I are so like we always right are watching the birds, and we actually like have said that like, is this just something that like naturally comes with old
It
age? Because
sneaks
I've
up on
always
you.
loved birds, but now we're like, ooh, well, what bird is that? Like, ooh, what bird is
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I told him, I
Bird.
said, I'm going to get you a bird book so we can like, he's like, we can
Yes.
mark it off. And I was like, okay, I think we've officially, we've officially
We've
had
gone
all
around
right.
the bend.
So
Yeah.
now you just confirmed it as I'm in the
So
bird
yeah,
watching
well,
house.
ASU has like courses that you could take when you're over 55 for really, really cheap. And they're extended learning or something like that. And they have a bird one. And I was telling my
Ooh.
husband, I was like, I want a fake ID so that I can be 55 and get into this extended learning ASU bird watching class. Like, there's no getting into bars anymore. I'm trying to get into the active senior learning lessons. And I'm not that far away. The fake ID does not have to change that much, you guys. Ah,
I'd be really for
oh,
that.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay, Jody has
awesome.
shared a healing ourselves, healing our world link. Thank you, Jody. I am going to copy that. I'm opening it in my browser.
Oh, look at all of those.
Oh, April. That is like magical.
I love them.
Oh,
My daughter, when she moved into her, like even at the
thank you, April.
apartments, she would hang up her hummingbird feeder because she doesn't like anything that flies. So she doesn't like butterflies, she doesn't like birds, except hummingbirds. She can handle those.
Yeah.
So we have friends that live in the Patagonia Mountains, and that's
Yeah.
a place.
Beautiful.
So yeah, that I didn't bring this up in our group, but that is what really brings me joy, is spending time with them. So looking forward,
Yeah,
I do that as much as possible. And hummingbird is my spirit animal. So
I love it.
I love that. That's so lovely. Anyone else have anything they want to share? And if you're typing in the chat, keep typing. That's a great place to share too, especially if you have links to things. And I do want to say I'm super grateful for your guys' patience with me today. Usually I live in the educator space with ACEs, and it was a lot of fun to do something different and build a different deck and learn these things. And so I appreciate you guys being here and being patient with my technology abilities, and just the conversation has been great. I feel like I've learned a lot and gotten a lot of joy from this, actually. My foreboding joy is on hold for right now. It's paused, but I'm thinking of a project. I'm actually thinking of a project for next year. Just undoing the presence of foreboding joy, right? Like really just trying to
Mhm.
think about just learning that vulnerability part of like, okay, can I be vulnerable enough to experience joy when it shows up, right? And so
Mhm.
I've really been thinking about working on that and kind of leaning into that, right? And not maybe setting some cynicism into a different bucket and letting it go away, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I just kind of having access to that through building this presentation has been really helpful for me.
Yeah, yeah, it was so good. I wanted to let all of you know that we just confirmed that Dr. Ariel Schwartz is going to be our opening keynote for the summit. And she just sent me the title and the description of her talk, but it's Resilience and Post-Traumatic Growth, the Art and Science of Transformational Change. Resilience and post-traumatic growth rely upon the opportunity to work through difficult life experiences. The deep inner work of healing from trauma eventually can help clients to realize they're stronger than they previously believed. In turn, they are more likely to accept themselves as they are, have an increased appreciation for life, develop new interests or passions, or discover new spiritual frameworks for their lives. As they feel stronger, they are more likely to see themselves as able to bring their gifts and contributions to the world. As therapists, we foster post-traumatic growth when we invite clients to take personal responsibility for the narrative that defines their lives. If their voices are full of disappointment and resignation, we can assist them to revise their stories until they arrive at satisfactory conclusions that support growth after trauma. This does not mean that they can change what happened in the past. However, they can work through the pain of the past until they find resolutions in the here and now, which I think is right along that, right, changing the pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of safety template, and that is, for those that it is harder to experience joy, that's just a safety template. That's something that was created in childhood that, our brain deemed that that was what was going to keep us safe, and that we can, as adults, kind of change that template, right? Adjust it, adjust the software of how it's expressed. And so super excited for that keynote. Thank you all so much for joining us and having this conversation. Yeah, it was very personal to Jaylene and I when we chose it, but I am glad that that it resonated with all of you. I will be sending the recording out for this, and then also that kind of joy template, those questions that we asked, to you guys as well. So that way, if you are looking at, adding that to your practice, that you have those questions to look for. So I hope everybody has a fantastic day. And since this was on your calendar for 2 hours, please take at least 10 to 15 minutes to yourself, because you should still be in a meeting.
That's right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.